Aloha everyone, what's going on my dudes? Welcome to another RuneScape discussion video. For this video I want to talk about skill reworks, specifically which one I think should be the next one and pushing skills to 120. Without any further ado, let's jump right into the video, let's go.
Cats is the illest. What you talking about, Willis?
Alright guys, for this discussion video I got two main questions for you. First one being, which skill, if you had to choose one, do you think is in the most need of a rework? And two, if you had to choose one, which one would you like to see pushed to 120? For you, the answer to those two questions might be the same answer, or it might be different. At least for me, it is different. So we're going to talk about what I think for those two questions and the things I would do. So first and foremost, what skill do I think is in the most need of a rework? My immediate thought when I hear of what should change is things like construction, maybe crafting to be in line with smithing for rangers, or even rune crafting to be in line with smithing for magic. And while I do think those things do need to happen, I don't think they're as necessarily needed at this moment. While coming up with the idea for this, I was definitely heavily leaning towards construction, but we are getting a construction update later this month, so depending on how that goes, I might be willing to wait longer for an update or a rework to that skill, but it hasn't come out yet, so I wanted to omit that from my answer. So to answer this question, I asked myself, what skill doesn't really get use? And those other ones I mentioned before actually do get use. Maybe not so much construction, but I explained why I didn't want to include that for my answer. But definitely crafting and rune crafting get use, even if they are in need of rework. So my answer ultimately ended up being agility. I don't think agility really gets much use, if at all, on any type of regular basis. Agility is a support skill, and I think the skill itself should really reflect that. We've seen it here and there with being able to multiple pickpocket, bare hand hunter, and various things like that, but I think it needs to be integrated in much more skills, more specifically making it so you can do things, complete tasks and activities at a faster rate. We've already seen things like this recently. For example, the screening soil ability on the Lunar Spellbook allows you to screen soil at a much faster rate than if you're doing it at the screening station. Those kinds of things are what I would like to see happen with agility, where it simply just speeds up your skilling in other areas, which would really make having a high level agility be beneficial for you overall. Another benefit they could do, although they have said if they do a rework to agility, they don't want to include any type of combat benefits, I think they should at least have something marginal like a 1 to 2% chance to dodge a hit, maybe even less than that, like a 0.5% if people feel like that's overpowered, just to reflect, having such a high agility level if you do have one. You would imagine an agile person would be able to dodge attacks, and it only makes sense. And it doesn't really add any power creep, as it doesn't make your character any more powerful. It just has that small chance of mitigating some incoming damage. But if something like that doesn't get included, I wouldn't be worried too much about it. Another thing, I think there needs to be a reason to actually train the skill, not just have a high level. One of the good ideas that they talked about with archaeology was an invention item that would allow you to gain divine charges from surging and running around. I think that was a great idea. However, I would change it and make it only give you divine charges if you're training at an agility course. That way it creates a way of not only maintaining your invention items, but also a money-making method if you want to sell those divine charges to other players. I also think there should be like a Silverhawk outfit, which would be like the elite skilling outfit for agility. I don't know exactly what kind of benefits it would have, but I imagine something like a teleport to all of the courses. Maybe give like a 7% chance to get a codex page on Anachronia. And I don't know, there's some other benefits they could throw at it as well. But yeah, once again, I think it should be agility. Reason being, there's not really much reason to train the skill, and it doesn't really benefit you for having a particularly high level at that skill. So if you are answering that question, I want you to consider those two things. Does the skill currently get trained, and is it beneficial to have high levels at that skill? Then give me your answer of what skill you think needs to be reworked next. Moving on, we're going to talk about pushing a skill to 120. For me, that's a lot easier and I didn't really have to think about it. I personally think that summoning should be pushed to 120, seeing as we're really crowding up the back end of the skill with a lot of familiars, and it doesn't really necessarily make sense seeing as like the Ripper Demon is a higher damage output than like the Steel Titan, but the Steel Titan is a higher level. It doesn't really make much sense. So when they push it to 120, those need to be shuffled around significantly, need to be changed and made more beneficial and be made to make more sense for their usability and benefits. Also, they need to rework a lot of the lower tier familiars and make them much more useful, while also adding more useful familiars at the higher level. For example, I think the best woodcutting familiar is a beaver, which is extremely low level, and there are a couple of other examples like that scattered throughout the skill that could use a higher tier familiar, like the highest fishing one is a granite lobster, so on and so forth. They also need to definitely rework a lot of the other combat familiars because the vast majority of them do not get any type of use. Just a quick example that came to my head at one point, the 3 titans you unlock at once, like fire, ice, and I can't remember the other one, do not really get much use. What I personally would do with those specific ones is make them like a weaker version of Nihils, where maybe they only give a 2% buff to your accuracy, but you can still see how they would definitely be beneficial for those who can't afford or don't have the level to utilize Nihils. Another way to make those monsters that don't get utilized much more use is to have them have an increased damage output to specific monster types. That way, if you know you're killing demons, you know you need to bring a certain monster, or if you're killing dragons, you bring another monster, so on and so forth, to really see those underutilized familiars get use. And the final thing I would like to see for the summoning skill is basically a change in the way the skill is trained itself. I think there should be much less focus on creating pouches, and your primary method of training the skill would actually be utilizing the familiars that you create. So that would mean that training summoning could be done so through not only combat but skilling as well. If you're farming with a tree ant or fishing with a lobster, maybe mining with a titan or gargoyle, that would be your method by which you would train summoning. I am curious to see what you guys think about that in particular. Do you prefer making pouches as your method of training, or would you rather use your familiars and gain XP through there? Obviously, it would need some level of balance, but that's not for me to determine for this video. Oh, and I guess one final thing I thought of that just popped in my head. If 120 summoning does become a thing and they increase that skill, do you think they should increase the combat level? It would be sensible to do so. I don't know if that many levels really affects your combat level with the combat level calculator. I imagine it would to some extent, but would you be open to an increase to the combat level, seeing as I think a lot of people have grown to love the 138. They did increase it to 200 with the release of EOC, and it was reverted back because people wanted 138. So I could see the potential for not wanting that to change. Anyways, those are my ideas, at least a condensed version for those 2 skills. I didn't want to draw it out too much for this video, just to, sprinkle a little bit of ideas out there. Let me know what you guys think about any of those ideas, or try to answer those questions. Which skills would you want to see reworked? Which ones would you want to see increased to 120? And what kind of benefits do you imagine would come with an increase or a rework to those skills? Love to hear from you in the comments below. I'm going to wrap up the video there. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet and you want to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, then hit that subscribe button. Anyways, I appreciate you watching. I am out. Aloha.